King Solomon was known throughout the world for his unmatched wisdom, vast wealth, and great power. As the son of King David, he inherited a kingdom that reached unprecedented prosperity under his reign. People from distant lands came to seek his counsel and learn from his God-given wisdom. But despite all his wisdom, even Solomon was not immune to the pitfalls of life. His story is one of both triumph and tragedy, filled with lessons about relationships, trust, and the power of discernment. Solomon's early years were marked by his devotion to God. When he became king, he asked God not for riches or military strength, but for wisdom to govern his people. God was pleased with Solomon's request and granted him wisdom that surpassed any man who ever lived, along with great wealth and honor. Solomon's fame spread far and wide, and rulers, like the Queen of Sheba, marveled at his understanding and the prosperity of his kingdom. Among Solomon's many accomplishments was the building of the magnificent temple in Jerusalem, a place for the Lord's name to dwell. But as the years passed, Solomon's life became filled with distractions. Despite knowing the law that warned against marrying foreign women who worshipped other gods, he took many wives from different nations. According to the scriptures, Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. While his kingdom expanded through these alliances, his heart slowly drifted away from God. In his writings, Solomon often spoke of the dangers of being led astray. In Proverbs, he warned against the seductive woman whose charm and flattery could lead an unsuspecting man into ruin. He compared such a man to an ox being led to the slaughter, unaware that every step brought him closer to destruction. Solomon's words painted a vivid picture of how seduction doesn't only target the body, but can also ensnare the heart, mind, and soul. The king's warning wasn't limited to physical temptation. He spoke of anyone who might use manipulation or deceit to gain control over another person. Yet, despite his wisdom and these profound warnings, Solomon's life began to reflect the very traps he cautioned others against. As he married foreign women who worshipped other gods, their influence gradually turned his heart from the Lord. Solomon's palace was filled with splendor, but it also harbored dangerous influences. His foreign wives, who brought their gods and customs with them, gradually led him into idolatry. He built high places for these foreign deities, causing him to worship other gods alongside the God of Israel. Solomon had ignored his own advice, the very wisdom that once made him great. The sweetness and excitement of these relationships felt good in the moment, but they came with a hidden cost. He recalled his own warnings from Proverbs, where he compared the words of an unfaithful woman to honey, sweet to the taste, but bitter as wormwood in the end, cutting deeply like a two-edged sword. Solomon experienced the pain and spiritual consequences firsthand, as his divided heart drew him away from his Creator. As time went on, conflict began to seep into Solomon's relationships. He once wrote, "It is better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than in a wide house with a contentious woman." His wisdom recognized the toll that strife can take on a person's spirit. In the palace, surrounded by many wives and concubines, there was a lack of peace. His many marriages did not bring contentment, but instead created divisions and unrest. Just as he warned in Proverbs 27, constant conflict can wear down even the strongest person, like a continual dripping on a rainy day. The blessings of his wide and luxurious house became burdens when the joy of his relationships turned into endless arguments and dissatisfaction. The once glorious palace became a place where Solomon sought refuge on the rooftops to escape the conflict below. Solomon's greatest tragedy was not the conflict within his palace, but the division within his own heart. For it was written in 1 Kings that, when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God. The king who once built a temple for God now built altars for the gods of his wives. The man who had everything, a kingdom, wisdom, and the favor of God, found himself spiritually bankrupt. His story serves as a cautionary tale, illustrating how even the wisest can fall when they stray from the path of righteousness. Despite having been granted divine wisdom, Solomon's choices led him away from God. He saw his father's legacy of faith crumble before his eyes as he worshipped idols, something David never did. The consequences of his actions extended beyond his personal life and affected the entire kingdom. Israel would eventually suffer division. The power of discernment. In his later years, Solomon reflected on the mistakes he had made. He understood that discernment was more than knowledge. It was seeking God's guidance in every decision. He wrote, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding." Solomon acknowledged that human understanding was limited, and that even great wisdom could be swayed by emotions, biases, and deception. He urged future generations to seek wisdom from God, to trust in divine guidance, and to cultivate discernment in relationships. Whether facing the allure of the seductive, the pain of the unfaithful, or the weariness of constant strife, Solomon's advice was to cling to God's truth. For only God could see the true intentions of the heart and direct one's steps on the path of righteousness. The final lesson: as Solomon neared the end of his life, he penned his reflections in the book of Ecclesiastes. There, he acknowledged the vanity of pursuing wealth, pleasure, and power. His concluding words, "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man," revealed that after all his experiences, both the highs and the lows, only a life devoted to God had true meaning. Solomon's story is not just one of warning, but also of hope. It reminds us that even when we falter, there is still the opportunity to turn back to God. His life teaches us to value wisdom, seek godly relationships, and guard our hearts with discernment. And above all, it shows us that while human wisdom is valuable, divine wisdom is essential for living a life that truly pleases God.